to win back some strength, some political support, some social support. I think that there are some basic things that we should achieve.
Yeah.
The first is to reclaim hope against anger and nostalgia of the past. Uh, Usually a nostalgia of a constructive past that really never happened, but the right is very keen on doing this. So the left needs to articulate a credible, and I would say once again understandable utopia for the future, which must be mobilizing, centered on everyday life security, on the security of the future horizons for each and every one of us. So what we could call human security, okay? Um, uh, for a climate of pride in work, for a community solidarity, okay? And for this, the left's discourse should move from an abstract construction into a focus on everyday life.
Welcome back to the Left Agora. I'm Akif, and today I'm joined by Jose Manuel Preza, the national coordinator of the left bloc, Bloco de Esquerda, in Portugal. Since November 2025, he has served as the party's national coordinator. He previously served in 3 Portuguese parliamentary legislatures for the left bloc, and he was the third vice president of the Assembly of the Republic between 2015 and 2022. He is also a full professor at the University of Coimbra. We had a very inspiring conversation touching on very significant issues for left-wing politics today, and not only concerning the left bloc as one of the important parties of the European left, but also concerning broader challenges facing left parties across Europe. In this interview, we discussed the recent electoral performance of the left bloc and the political challenges facing the party. The conversation then turned to the difficulties facing the European left and the possible solutions. We also discussed artificial intelligence, its impact on society, and how left-wing politics can respond to new technological challenges. Finally, Mr. Preza reflected on his experience in both academia and politics and how these two worlds inform each other. And now, here is my conversation with Jose Manuel Preza. Mr. Proeza, it's a great pleasure to have you with us. We can begin today with the transition inside the left bloc after the
Yep.
2025 election. Then we can move to the broader state of the left in Europe, and
Okay.
from there to the future of technology and politics. Finally, I will be glad to discuss how your two worlds, academia and politics, shape each other. In the May 2025 legislative election, the left bloc won around 2% of the vote
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
secured one MP. This marks its weakest result in a legislative election.
That's right.
A few months later, you became the party's national coordinator, and during that transition, you spoke about the need for an esquerda de pontes, if my pronunciation is correct,
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
left, a left of bridges.
Bridges. That's right. Yes, yes.
Looking back, how do you understand that result? And looking ahead, what does this left of bridges mean in practice as a way to rebuild the party's support?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for this opportunity to talk with you. I think that the Left Agora is really an amazing piece of an amazing contribution for our common goals of think critically about society and to find new ways for the left to act and to to react also to what is going on. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And
I appreciate.
well, about your question, I would say that the last legislative elections, the results that we got left us with a parliament in Portugal that is controlled by the right and the far right, which has grown immensely. Together, they have in this moment two-thirds of the parliament, which is enough to change the constitution itself. So the left bloc had a particularly negative results, but the whole left, it is the whole left, let's say on the left side of the Social Democrats in Portugal, which is in a very difficult situation. So together, the three left-wing parties received in 2025 only a half of the votes that the left bloc had obtained in 2019. Um, so building within this context, I would say, building bridges means being able to find paths within the whole left, uh, the political parties and the social movements, and all the the complex reality, social reality, to change this. Those paths should obviously include the capacity of creating social majorities against for the struggles against the cost of living crisis, or or against the genocide in Palestine, or for a fair and for a green future. And that must happen not only within the parliament or within the party's machinery, I would say, but namely in the social terrain, so in social movements, in unions, in our everyday lives. So this is the scope that we give to the expression a left of bridges.
Yes. So it must be beyond party politics, but also in other spheres as well, you mean?
Absolutely, absolutely, sure.
Yeah, yeah. And soon after you became national coordinator of the party, Portugal also had the presidential elections
Yeah,
in January 2026 and also
right.
the second round in February 2026.
Mhm.
Given the very short time between those two moments, your
Yeah,
election as national coordinator and the presidential elections,
right.
did that election reinforce your diagnosis of the
Mhm.
party's situation, or did it show something different? What
I
was
see.
your
Yeah,
experience in that
yeah, yeah.
short period in the party?
Well, I think that in fact both elections reveal two things, and I must emphasize something that I said before, which is on the one side there is a clear political and cultural and electoral turn or a shift to the right, to the right wing area, and namely to the far right. And on the other side, the entire left is losing ground. And both elections involve this. And I will try to explain about the presidential election that you mentioned. In fact, the candidate that the left bloc supported for the presidential election, which was our former coordinator, came ahead of the other left-wing candidates, but at only 2% of the global votes. So what happened was that left-wing voters mobilized to vote for the center-left candidate because they were afraid that they were scared that that could be a second round with only right and far right candidates. So the results tell us that the radical left is faced with some basic challenges. The first is to gain ground against the far right, and this is something that is extremely challenging, not only in Portugal, of course. And the second one is that the left is challenged to present a credible, mobilizing, and understandable alternative to the
Yeah.
parties of the center. Okay, so for these two challenges, I am certain that we need a left of bridges. Once again, this is precisely the point. I mean,
Yeah.
in order to struggle for affordable housing, for qualified public services, for labor rights, for an eco-socialist future, and all these basic lines of what the left program should be for our societies.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, perhaps when we discuss the situation in Europe, we can
Mhm.
still go back to Portugal. And
Yeah.
thank you for this perspective. But this also brings us to naturally to a broader question, because these discussions, these
Mhm.
problems are not taking place only in Portugal. So I want to
Sure.
broaden this
Yeah.
beyond Portugal,
Of
across
course.
Europe. Social issues like housing, low wages, and you
Hmm.
mentioned some of them,
Right.
inequalities in security and
Yeah.
pressure on public services remain very real. Yet, in
Mhm.
several European contexts, the left has found it difficult to transform these concerns into a political momentum, while the
Yes.
radical right, far
True.
right, has
Yeah.
advanced.
Uh-huh.
So, why do you think this is happening, and what does it reveal about the current state of the left in
Yeah.
Europe? Could you please make an assessment
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
of?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I will say nothing new about this. I mean, obviously the rise, the immense rise of the radical right or the far right in the face of collapsing social welfare can be explained by several elements, by several factors, and I will point just two or three, which, at least in my own reflection and the reflection that we collectively do in the left bloc, are the most important ones. So the first one, for sure, is the what we could call the trap of resentment. The left is usually tempted to explain the basic elements of our everyday lives, the housing crisis, for example, or the crumbling public services, through very complex narratives. So, for example, the financialization of housing, or the fiscal austerity, or the corporate tax evasion. While while the left does this through very complex and deep understandings
Abstract.
of the complexity of reality, the radical right offers very simple, very immediate scapegoats. In fact, I mean, the far right names some of the irrational people's fears and points to false causes of those fears and promises a protective community and a strong state. This is the far right's receipt. So they channel economic anxiety and social anxiety into, for example, into anti-immigration feelings or sentiments, um, creating a false narrative of scarcity. Uh, Sentences like, well, there are no hospital beds or there are no affordable homes for you because they have been given to outsiders, to strangers, to, this kind of thing. So it's really an emotional narrative, a cultural response which resonates much faster than the idea of a proposal of a structural reform. Okay, so the left feels the need to explain the full complexity of the world in order to justify the difficulty of change, instead of pointing towards an horizon to create the necessity the necessity of gaining strength. Okay, so this is the first element. The second element, which I would emphasize, is something that has been, dealt with by different left-wing forces and scholars and academics and intellectuals, which is somehow the divorce from the traditional working class. In
Yeah.
fact, in the last decades, more in some countries, less in other countries. The center left parties embraced the so-called third way, which is everything that we know about it, and have focused mainly on cosmopolitan urban dynamics. And in doing so, they drifted away from the industrial working class and from geographical peripheries. Okay, so
Yeah.
the radical right was very successful in capitalizing this feeling of being left behind by globalization, by blending economic protectionism and cultural conservatism. So it is really an easy way of bringing the puzzle pieces together. So the left is paying the price. And finally, I would raise just for not really. I don't want to forget this factor. Perhaps we could call it the Greek factor, but I don't know. Well, the point is that in 2015, as we all remember, the Greek left government, which was elected, and that gave a huge amount of hope to all the European left, ended up managing austerity instead of fighting it. So this reinforced the idea, or this gave grounds for attacking the left with the words, they are all the same. They are all the same. I mean, they all have in mind the same austerity policies, okay? And when the left stops looking like a clear anti-establishment force, the angry voters obviously look for the disruption on the radical right. And this is also, I would say, an element that should be taken into account for our political, understanding and form of acting.
These are great insights, Mr. Preza, certainly. So, language and communication first. The left
Hmm.
fails to convince the electorate when it explains complex
Hmm.
phenomena, whereas the radical right
Yeah,
basically
yeah,
communicates through
yeah, yeah,
emotional
yeah, yeah.
and
True.
simple
Yes,
arguments. And this
precisely.
divorce from the traditional working class, and finally the experience of the radical left in the mid 2000s, and basically this
Right.
wind of those years is no longer blowing as fast as it
Yeah.
used to do,
Hmm.
and the left lost its anti-establishment identity
Yeah.
in the eyes of some people
I'm
because
afraid
of
so.
the
Yes.
capitulation of the Greek radical left back in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
summer
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
2015. I understand very well. But what concrete changes then does the European left
I
need
was
to make?
expecting that, of
Uh,
course.
yes, I mean,
Well,
discourse, communication, you already
mhm.
mentioned these aspects, but there are
Yeah.
other elements as well. Organization of
Well,
left-wing
uh,
parties, the
it's a
communication
sort
between them.
of million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, if we were able to easily identify the response, obviously the left would be much, much stronger than it is. But let me just tell you two or three elements in that could, contribute to a common reflection on this.
Yeah.
To win back some strength, some political support, some social support. I think that there are some basic things that we should achieve.
Yeah.
The first is to reclaim hope against anger and nostalgia of the past. Uh, Usually a nostalgia of a constructive past that really never happened, but the right is very keen on doing this. So the left needs to articulate a credible, and I would say once again, understandable utopia for the future, um, which must be mobilizing, centered on everyday life security, on the security of the future horizons for each and every one of us. So what we could call human security, okay? Um, uh, for a climate of pride in work, uh, for a community solidarity, okay? And for this, the left's discourse should move from an abstract construction into a focus on everyday life. So this is it, okay? Now, the second thing, which is extremely difficult, but which I believe is fundamental, is the need to articulate what we could call bread and butter issues with um, intersecting goals. Okay, um, public housing, uh, dignified wages, um, rebuilding or qualifying the public services. Okay, the welfare state. Um, these must be obviously non-negotiable red lines, okay, of any left-wing platform. The climate agenda. Um, it cannot be seen as a fuel tax that punishes the poor. So, yeah, we need to articulate these bread and butter issues together with intersectional or intersecting goals.
Yeah.
One other element I believe is, um, uh, which is something also extremely difficult at this moment, is to articulate the left wing presence in the social media with going back to neighborhoods, being present there, in the social terrain, okay? Making alliances with grassroots movements. Uh, but I would emphasize being there presentially and not
Yeah.
virtually.
Yeah.
And finally, I think that in order to regain this political strength, the left must have a clear strategy on immigration and on security. The left cannot be defensive on these areas. The left cannot ignore anxieties, but the left must be able to respond to those anxieties through a focus on massive investment in local public services and in struggling against labor exploitation. So this is it. So in short, to win back some strength, I think that the left needs to copy with some basic elements. It needs to offer a powerful alternative rooted in economic security, dignity, class solidarity, and promising promising horizons for the future. This is it.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. These are very important points, but I would like to ask you if you can elaborate more. One of your points that you raised,
Hmm.
being more active physically
Yeah.
in neighborhoods,
Yeah. Well.
rather than sharing posts on social media only. You
Right.
said
Yeah.
left-wing
Yeah.
forces must be physically
Well.
present in neighborhoods as well. But
Yeah.
as the newly elected national coordinator of the party, do you have plans or
Yeah.
is this
Sure.
already an active
Sure. Sure.
process in your
You know
party?
the I would say the media activism, namely social media activism,
Yeah,
um, is a very dangerous form of acting because it most of the times provokes an illusion of massive acceptance of your words, and what you are doing is talking with a bubble, with a very limited bubble, you know.
Yeah.
And the fact, well, the left has always, as historically been, as basically historically involved an attitude of solidarity, which is not virtual, is something very material, very, physical, in fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this involves the diving into concrete social reality in neighborhoods, in the peripheries of the urban areas,
Yeah.
in the rural areas, which are most of the times forgotten by public policies. So this return to a physical presence in the areas of, you know, overexploitation, attacks to dignity is of utmost importance. At the end of the day, the left activists will be, evaluated, will be assessed by acknowledging that they were there and the others were not. They have
Yeah.
been with us in this concrete struggle, and the others have not been there. So
Yeah.
I find it quite important. Just to give you an example, in Portugal at this time, some for 5 6 years, we have been very much involved in organizing um, a strong social movement in the peripheries of the two major cities in Portugal, Lisbon and Oporto. And the
Yeah.
neighborhoods in the periphery of those cities are a sort of mix of all the, let's say, um, uh, negative aspects, if there are any positive, but the negative aspect of capitalism. So overexploitation, lack of dignity, racism, xenophobia, sexism, this kind of thing. So we have been able, together with people from other left-wing parties and a numerous set of people that are not linked with parties, to organize, neighborhoods, to organize communities. This idea of organizing community is of utmost importance. This is a way of struggling against the hegemony, in Gramscian terms, the
Yeah.
hegemony of individualism, competition, and this kind of thing. So, yeah, I think that this is the way we should, you know, this is a kind of mindset, political mindset or ideological mindset that we should, go on strengthening. Yeah.
Yeah. And until the next legislative elections, we can assume that the left bloc will be putting more efforts to be physically
Well,
present in
we will
these.
do our best. This is it. I mean, we are betting very much on that. Obviously, I'm not saying that the presence in social media should not be a field of investment. Of course. I mean, this is a terrain, this is the domain that we should dispute with maximum quality and with
Yeah.
maximum capacity of, forming an image, forming a discourse, forming, a political way of thinking about reality. So this is definitely something that we should assume as a priority, but without forgetting the need to be physically present in the areas in which the social struggle emerges and needs, organizing factors, activism, and so on. Yeah, this is it.
Yeah. I wish we had more time to elaborate other solutions that you proposed as well. The first
Mhm.
one, for example, reclaiming hope. I think it
Yeah,
was also very important,
sure.
not only
Yeah,
at national level, but at the European and global level, actually, that's
absolutely.
crucial.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there are
yeah.
many different ways of reclaiming this hope.
Yep.
through cooperation and communication. But I would like to move. So far,
Yeah,
we have
sure.
spoken about the present challenges facing the left
Yeah.
in Europe and in Portugal, but I would like to look ahead and ask about some of the longer term transformations that may
Hmm.
enormously
Yeah.
reshape politics and society. When you think about the future of the world, do you believe technologies
Hmm.
such as artificial intelligence, well, particularly artificial intelligence, will
Hmm.
deepen inequality, surveillance, and control,
Yeah.
or can they, or can it still serve to expand freedom, equality,
Hmm. Hmm.
justice,
Hmm.
and peace, important
Yeah.
left
I
teams?
think.
And how should left politics, including parties like yours, respond
Hmm.
to this challenge, or depending on how you frame it, this
Yeah.
opportunity?
Yeah. Well, ambivalence is the right word to talk about this. I mean, obviously, we are all aware that uh, let's say the algorithmic power is unprecedented, and the largest companies in the world are also those that organize consumption and and the everyday life of a large part of global population. And techno oligarchs therefore are those that have an authoritarian form of power more and more. Some of them we all know are promoters of neo-fascism, such as those that are surrounding and supporting Trump's policies, and we should be aware that they will not back down. I mean, technological sophistication enables as you said, greater control, greater alienation. So we should be very much aware of this. But on the other side, this is why I talk about ambivalence. Sorry, is that various different movements have managed to use communication and bring together mass actions. For example, in the Arab Spring, just to quote the most well-known reality, and they have been able also to achieve electoral successes. Like look, for example, at the use the extremely competent use of communication technologies by Zoran Mamdani in New York. Okay, so it proves that it is possible, and that the left should seize these opportunities, should build capacities for the expansion in in the area of digital media, as I said in the previous in your previous answer, in your previous question.
Yeah, yeah.
So definitely, left-wing parties must learn and must collaborate with each other to create platforms, to create common initiatives, common trends, common communication channels against alienation and promote combative political action. I see. Let me be quite frank to you. I mean, I see the left agra as one of these instruments. I mean, it has been created through this spirit of initiative, but it is an open resource for people to learn from each other and to learn from this kind of common reflection. So I think
Yeah.
that ambivalence is the right word to describe this area.
Yeah. And do you believe the responsibility to shape and regulate artificial intelligence falls more heavily on left-wing actors, parties in countries
Hmm.
where these tech giants
Hmm.
that you mentioned
Yeah.
are based? Or do you think all left-wing actors, movements, parties,
Yeah.
regardless of their country, have a
Hmm. Hmm.
role
I see.
in building international
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
frameworks
yeah.
for these technologies?
Well, the point is that on the one side, these companies have their headquarters in some, countries in which the
Yeah.
social movements in order to control or to put some discipline in terms, namely, of protecting private personal rights, or in
Yeah.
order to avoid forms of hyper surveillance or whatever. Uh, in those countries, obviously, the mobilization of important, relevant social movements is of extreme importance. But the point is that the effects or the implementation of those, of these instruments have a worldwide scope, and obviously, the the struggle in all the other areas of the world against this culture of sophisticated private control of our everyday lives.
Yeah.
This creation of a common concern and of a common struggle, in fact, against this is something that should be at the heart of an internationalist left wing attitude, I would say. So the solidarity that we claim for our, identity is a solidarity not only of defending or supporting workers' rights and women's rights and racialized people's rights, but also a solidarity against those entrepreneurial empires that whose economic success is made of our personal data, and therefore we are all, you know, we are all called to, in our different countries, have a very brave attitude against these instruments, because easily they are easily accepted as easing our way of life, and
Yeah.
therefore it's a very difficult thing to be struggled against. So definitely solidarity is the crucial element for the success of these struggles. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. And I would like to move from the future
Mm.
to your own intellectual and political journey,
Oh,
to a little bit to the past, because you bring together both academia and political life, and you are not only a politician but also
yeah,
an academic who has worked
right.
for many years on international relations. How does
Yeah.
your experience in academia shape your
Mhm.
thinking and practice in politics? And does political practice in turn change the way you approach the
I
questions
see.
you have studied in academia?
Well, it's a reflexivity exercise, which I try to do, almost every day, of course. Um, Very, very briefly, I would say that my academic background, as you said, has taught me. I mean, I am a professor for 45 years. So it has taught me to be very skeptical on simplistic explanations of reality, and to explore how power informs the reality we live in, and mainly the reality we want to live in. Okay, so this is something that I have learned from my academic, trajectory. Um, well, but the point is that politics tends to compress complexity. Okay, we talked about this a few moments ago. So it has a different rhythm, and perhaps has always had this different rhythm, but today it is more impressive than ever. So political communication is something that tends to an oversimplification of reality. So within political activism, the on the one hand, on the other hand, tends to disappear. On the other side, in the academic world, you can spend weeks, you can spend months, refining an argument, refining, form of thinking. Okay, but in politics you cannot do that because you have to act under pressure, under timely pressure, within constraints. This is it. So the challenge that I face as an academic and a political activist, and now having responsibilities of coordinating a political party, is not to lose complexity, but also to bring some density, some sense of contradiction to the political debate. But you are right. I mean, in fact, my political life, if I can say so, has also shaped my academic dimension, obviously, because being in the streets, speaking with not only organized collectivities, but also, common citizens in their everyday lives, it carries I mean it brings me some sense of reality and some sense of urgency in responding to those needs. So it pushes me to listen politically more carefully, to remain attentive to perspectives and forms of knowledge that are often absent from mainstream, institutional discourses. So yeah, I think that so these are contradictory trends, let's say. Politics forces me to confront contradictions in a much more concrete and immediate way, and in academia, contradictions are often analytical objects. In politics, we have to navigate with them while acting. So it's a very, challenging combination.
And Mr. Preza, how do you think, what do you think about the relationship between academia and party politics? For example, your colleagues in other countries, or even in your country, party leaders, chairpersons, national coordinators,
Yeah.
or other leadership roles, people who are working in the
Uh-huh.
central committee of parties, decision-making platforms. Do you think that they follow, for example, the developments in academia? Do they follow the academic literature? Do they really somehow learn about learn about the outputs of academics,
Well, if
political
they don't do it, they should
sociologists?
do it. If they don't do it, they should do it because, I mean, academic debates, for example, in the area of international relations, the
Yeah,
area in which I work, or in international law, for example, in sociology, I mean, social sciences, but also in the area of artificial intelligence, for example. I mean,
yeah,
or biology, or
of course,
environmental
other disciplines as
sciences.
well.
You
Yeah,
know, so
yeah,
if they don't follow, if being academic, if being scholars, and also political activists, if within the sphere of academic work, they don't demand themselves to be able to follow closely the debates that are taking place. They not only lose quality for their academic life, they also lose instruments for their political reasoning and for their political action, because
yeah.
these are not separated worlds. I mean, in the academic life, in namely in those fields which I have quoted and many others, um, what we should do is to construct discourses, construct, um, you know, uh, policies, or at least feed those the policies that will have to answer to the main social problems. So definitely, I see academic debates not as neutral, not as neutral elements, but always as something that has to do with collective and individual choices. I follow very closely one of the major scholars in the area of critical international relations, which was a Canadian, um, you know, crucial thinker. His name was Robert Cox, and Cox has a very, synthetic sentence in which he says, "Theory is always for someone and for some purpose." And I follow this very closely. I mean, the academic work is not, a partisan work in terms of political parties, but it is
Yeah.
a work that produces ways of thinking, conceptions of society, conceptions of economy, of the relation of all this with the environment, and the relation of all this with dignity. So, therefore, uh, answering your question very, directly, if an academic who is also a political, leader, does not follow attentively the debates that are taking place in the academia, I think he is an incompetent scholar, but also an incompetent political leader.
I understand very well. It was these were great insights, certainly, Mr. Proza. Thank you very much
Well,
for joining me at the Left Agora.
it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
It
And
was a
once
great
again,
pleasure.
let me tell you that I feel quite privileged to collaborate with you in this very important platform that you have created and that you are, sharing with all of us. So
Thank
congratulations
you.
and thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm also privileged to host you.
Yeah,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
that.
I would like to thank Mr. Preza for his time, openness, and valuable insights throughout this conversation. I wish him all the best in his future work. And thank you all for watching The Left Agora. For more interviews like this one, be sure to subscribe to The Left Agora. Until next time, let's the Agora echo with new voices.